Our next delegation is going to be concerning the diversity, equity, and inclusion 4.2, and I'm going to call upon Sabrina Hill, a resident of the community.
Good morning, and thank you for furnishing me with an opportunity to speak before all of you today. When municipalities like Niagara Region create citizen-driven advisory committees such as the Women's Advisory Committee and the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Committee, what they are doing in essence is seeking out and soliciting valuable input from some of the more historically and institutionally marginalized and equity-seeking communities from across our peninsula. When the region assembled these worthwhile and admirable committees last term, what they were implementing was a creation of a place and time, or more precisely, a space where different people with different lived experiences from diverse socioeconomic, cultural, and geographic communities could come together and debate policy, share their experiences, and steer the direction of the region through new, bold, and beneficial initiatives. Ultimately, what the region created last term was an inclusive and responsive and effective polity with a shared, unified goal of improving the lives and outcomes of all residents of Niagara. These commendable exercises in inclusivity represent more than just some inconsequential notion of data collection and user feedback. Through the formation of these committees, the region prompted a fundamental shift in its culture and how it was going to do business going forward. These new promises symbolized acceptance, pride, hope, and opportunity for so many in Niagara. In a speech that I gave at the unveiling of the Pride Crosswalk last June, I thank those who helped make that happen, for letting the next young version of me know that their existence is acknowledged and accepted. My message then and now is one of love and hope. I like to think that the last term of council, through the creation of these progressive committees, was one of the same. The region took meaningful steps to acknowledge the intergenerational traumas many in our communities have faced and continue to face every day in every community in Niagara. These committees have and should represent more than partisan talking points. These advisory committees act as an incubator of ideas, where residents freely and safely offer their experiences and recommendations on harm reduction by expurgating oppressive policies and practices. While all of the members of the three committees I served on last term of council came from different backgrounds and lived experiences, we came together to accomplish different goals with a common, unifying theme of cooperation, effectiveness, and transparency. From my understanding, the region used a complex matrix to score each potential member for their various committees and recruited some of the very best residents from across the region. And in the end, those people did good work. Through adversity, we found incentive. Through research, we found reason. And through diversity, we found compromise. Speaking from personal experience, in the short time that I served on these two advisory committees in the last term, despite the roadblocks of a pandemic and a shortened term, we as a group of diverse and enthusiastic residents managed to accomplish a lot. Through the Women's Advisory Committee, several amazing women came together to advocate for crucial gender-based issue resolutions to genuine inaccessibility stemming from regional policies, priorities, and past decisions. At the close of last council, this group of leading women, all of whom rebudgeted time away from their work and families, served honorably their communities, their cities, and the region admirably and made Niagara better as a whole. While I served on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Committee, we had even more of an abbreviated time to improve diversity, equity, and inclusion in Niagara. If I may be so bold as to plagiarize from the region's website, the goal of the DEIAC is to address the negative impacts of bias and discrimination on the quality of life, safety, health, and inclusion. The DEIAC will work with staff in the community to make Niagara more welcoming, diverse, and inclusive. That's a monumental task. And despite being presented with this in its first iteration, I think all of us provided considerable advice and recommendations to regional council and staff. In my short tenure as chair of this significant committee, I was also frequently able to interface with legislative and support staff for the region. What comes next at first pass is going to sound like I'm auditioning for round 2 of chairship of the DIAC, but I can assure you it isn't. That part of my life is now behind me, but I ask for your indulgence for just a moment. As one does, after my term ended as chair, I reflected back on my brief tenure. I look back and ask myself, what could have I done differently? The first thing that comes to mind is procedurally. I could have managed the committee meetings with more in line with the rules of authority, precision, and confidence. Really though, what keeps me up occasionally is that I didn't direct the agenda with a little more charge. Or more plainly, I didn't encourage enough of the other members to put their concerns front and center of the agenda each meeting. I believe I failed as chair because I don't think I did enough to promote more voices. I wish I had more emphatically encouraged other committee members to recount their unique and valuable lived experiences. While some of these deficits as chair could be laid at the altar of inexperience and deficiencies of time, I will always see it as a missed opportunity. My concern, and ultimately what has me speaking before you today, is that some of the changes to the DEIC and other advisory committees, specifically some of the changes being proposed to the composition of the committee, while updated terms of reference before you state correctly that realigning chairship to one of the 2 elected regional councillors is consistent with the approach of other regional advisory committees. The report doesn't include the widely reported dissatisfaction with this arrangement. Locally and across the province, we've seen the results when a municipality attempts to direct and or ignore the advice and education opportunities about crucial issues from marginalized communities. While there were some small gains in the last municipal election for parity and other critical equity indicators, Niagara largely remains governed by a privileged class. With the vital mission before the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Committee of creating a plan to improve diversity, equity, and inclusion in Niagara, the region must hold the position of chair open to a voice or voices from exceptional residents who don't share in some of the same privilege. If the region is serious about addressing the negative impacts of bias and discrimination on the quality of life, safety, health, and inclusion, what purpose does it serve to put someone from the region as chair? Now, that isn't to say a regional councillor can't come from an equity-seeking group, or that they can't be a fierce ally for marginalized communities, but by denying the opportunity of leadership to the voiceless, is the region not once again institutionally and unnecessarily denying accessibility and ownership to a Muslim voice, a queer voice, a Black voice, or an Indigenous voice? I hope the fine men and women that comprise Corporate Services Committee will unite around allyship and provide leadership allowances to those that are conventionally finding themselves depreciated and denied the exigencies of opportunity. I failed as chair because I didn't create a space for those voices. I hope the region, this committee, and this council won't repeat my mistakes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.